Hey everyone, welcome to the June edition of the Reading Research Recap. For this month, I chose an article on dyslexia. So this article is not an original research article. It's actually an introduction to a special issue on dyslexia that covers things such as what is dyslexia, screening, which interventions are effective, and what teachers should know. And if you know me, I love introductions to special issues because I feel like you get the key highlights of all the papers that are going to come out, and you don't have to read those unless you really care about it and want some more like in-depth knowledge. I also loved this because I feel like it does a really good job and succinct way of addressing some of the myths that surround dyslexia. And I fell victim to a lot of these myths when I was teaching. So about like 12, 15 years ago now, I taught students with severe and persistent word reading difficulties, and I believed some of the things that we're going to go over that we now know are not true. And we probably even knew they were not true back then. We just weren't good about getting the research out. So my hope is that this gets shared very widely. I also just want to say a couple more things that we now know that states, I believe almost all 50 states have quote unquote dyslexia laws. So this legislation is either for universal screening, teacher prep programs, or use of evidence-based practices. And it's also pretty timely because dyslexia has been in the news of late. Governor Gavin Newsom in the state of California actually just set aside, I think, about $1 million for universal screening of students in California. So let's go ahead and dive right into these 12 facts need to knows about dyslexia. Dyslexia is a word-level reading difficulty, and it's one of the most common specific learning disabilities. It tends to run in families, so it has a genetic component. It can be mild or severe on a continuum, and it can present as trouble with spelling, not just reading. Dyslexia is not a vision or visual processing deficit, so special fonts such as dyslexia, colored overlays, or colored lenses will not work. Also, reversing letters is common for many emerging readers and is not unique to children with dyslexia. Now that we know what dyslexia is and some of the key characteristics, what do you do next? Well, there's two key points in this section. First, intervene early. There's research that shows the earlier you intervene, the greater the reading gains students make. Second, use screeners that have been validated. You don't have to go out and buy a new dyslexia screener. If you are using things like DIBELS or the primary reading inventory, you can go to the National Center for Intensive Intervention, look at their tools charts to find screeners that are appropriate for identifying struggling readers. And a key point here, earlier I said that dyslexia is a word level reading difficulty, but a lot of kindergartners and first graders can't read words yet. Well, those tests such as DIBELS or ones like that have subtests of like letter naming, phoneme segmentation that have defined cut scores for identifying students at risk. So you don't need a new screener. You can use what you already have if you're using an appropriate screener to identify struggling readers. Once you've identified your struggling readers, how do you help them? Well, the common theme among effective interventions is explicit phonics instruction. You don't have to use multisensory approaches such as Orton-Gillingham. You can just use explicit phonics instruction paired with more opportunities for reading books. Struggling readers are just going to need more opportunities for practice than typically developing readers. So let's end with who should be delivering these interventions. And the authors are clear on this, that you don't have to be a certified language professional. Yes, the more training, we'll get to that in a second, the more knowledge you have is really helpful. But if you're a tier 1, delivering whole class systematic phonics instruction, you're still going to do a lot to help your struggling readers. And I mentioned more information is needed because they make this point. So educators need knowledge about how to provide evidence-based screening. And this quote is really telling. So let me read from this paper. They say students in teacher preparation programs have been observed to have a similar degree of knowledge about dyslexia as students in architecture. They have a citation here, White et al. 2020. I didn't go and read that one, but I'm really hoping that that was at the beginning of their teacher prep programs and that by the end, they actually did have a lot more knowledge than students studying architecture about dyslexia. And, I don't want to, this isn't just on the teachers, right? Researchers also need to do a better job of getting this information out there. I've been on both sides. I've been a teacher, I've been a researcher in my doc program, and I think that there's room for improvement on both sides. So I can't solve that here, but I do hope that this article, it's open access, gets shared very widely because I think it's very timely and very important. All right, that's all that I have for June, and I'll see you everyone in July.